Hi, Hamza. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys. We have with us Girija, and we'll talk to her in a moment. So, a very, very warm welcome to you, Girija. And once again, a very big congratulations on achieving that 750 with a verbal 44. I mean, what did you feel? What was the first thought that came into your mind when you saw that on the screen? 750 verbal 44. What did you think? What went on in your mind?
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me here, Sunita. Yeah, like I was shocked because when I was giving the paper, I found it really tough, and I had given it twice, and both the times I had got like 700. And like beyond the point, like even while I was giving the paper, I was just questioning, like, am I good enough for this, or just 700 my peak? And then I was like, okay, I think I'm not fared well, because I was finding the paper to be tough, and then suddenly on my screen I saw 750, and I'm like, what? So it
You
was like,
couldn't believe it.
yeah, I could not believe it, like, oh my god,
Okay,
because
okay,
it was
okay.
just like, hmm.
It
So
wasn't,
yeah,
you weren't prepared to see that 750, right?
I was, and I never thought, like, I had given mocks where, I did get like a 740.
740.
Once I got like a 760 or something. But after those mocks, when I went for my second attempt, I again got a 700. So uh, when I was giving my third attempt, I got a lot of easy questions on the quant side, and I'm like, probably I've screwed up my quants or something. And then I saw a 750, and I'm like, finally, I'm done with it.
Finally, you're done with it. Yes. So I remember the time, Girija, when we met for the first time, and you were good at that time also. But before I say what I found at that time, what do you think was missing in your earlier those two attempts when you gave GMAT and you came up with a 700? And this time around, when you gave, GMAT, what do you think was missing in the earlier attempts?
I think one was basic time management. So when you are studying, you're not focused on timing at all, because everyone tells you just know the concepts right, and then timing will come on its own. But the test is really tough. So you have to prepare for time when you're studying too. Also, I felt that there was not a proper structure. Like I could not figure out what topics am I going wrong in. And in GMAT, if you've given the paper, you'll realize that if you're bad in some topic, they continuously keep asking you questions on those. So it's very important to
Right.
identify those topics you are bad in, so next time when you go in, you're well prepared. So those were the things where I found, like, okay, I don't have that structure, and there are so many resources. And if you go to GMAT Club, you'll find so much helpful information, but
And
there's so much.
you'd actually used some of those resources. Like I remember you saying that you'd done some mocks on global experts, I think, and then you'd
Yeah.
use the EGMAT platform. So you didn't think that those platforms and the other resources that you used quite prepared you for this, the structured approach or what you were weak at. Those courses weren't able to help you point that out.
Yeah, so what really happened was, everyone told me that EGMAT is very good for verbal. So when I went there, and I used TTP, which I found way later for my quants. So TTP had a structure, I won't deny that, but they didn't have. They explain you all the concepts really well. You get a solid foundation, but then it's not very aligned to the official question, so you have to practice that. But it's good enough if you want to just build a foundation. But with EGMAT, what happened was, people said it's really good for verbal, especially if you're an Indian, probably you should go there and do it. But somehow I just ended up getting very confused. So my next
Can you
step was
elaborate a little bit on that? I would just want to take this opportunity because I think it's very important for students out there who want to score well to know that what is the difference between a course that claims to be vast and comprehensive and a course that is really comprehensive and really attuned to a student's needs. So I would just like you to point that out, please.
Yeah, so what happens is, so with EGMAT, they did have sentence correction modules, and I did those, so I was pretty confident, because I used to solve and get around like an 80% average and all. But I didn't, when I started doing the official questions, I didn't think they were aligned to that. And when you're doing the official questions, you sort of just get confused, like, okay, what were the principles, and how to comprehensively think. And like GMAT, it sort of make you like, after the sentence ends, you're like checking for like different things, like modifiers, comparisons, and all. And that method didn't work for me. Like with with GMATWhiz, what we are doing is like we are stopping in between. So it's not like we don't understand the meaning when we read the whole sentence together, but when we just take those breaks and stop in between, we sort of like see if it is logically making sense. Like, because
Great.
GMAT just loves doing that. That some subject is doing some action which actually it cannot do, and those things only happen when you actually keep pausing in between. And initially you think that, okay, this is very time consuming, how am I going to finish my paper? But actually this is one of the best ways to go through it. Once you get a hang of it, it's really simple to do. So
In
I felt
fact,
that, yeah, just like,
In
so
fact,
that's
I
why
remember you telling me that you'd missed the questions in your one of the attempts, and
Hmm.
and you still stuck to this so-called time-consuming process, but eventually it helped you. It did. How did it help you manage time? This approach
Yeah,
of
it just sort of gives you that confidence. Because see, what happens is when you just read the whole sentence together again, a lot of times these sentences are very confusing, and you're looking out for the big errors, but the errors will be very small. Like the subject and verb might not make logical sense, and you wouldn't look at it, you would be finding some
and
modifier
nobody
error.
teaches you this also that
No
look
one
out
teaches
for
you.
subject verb logical agreement. Nobody
No,
teaches you
no
this,
one teaches you
right?
this. Rather, like after my first attempt, I knew sentence correction was my weak link. So I went to some tutor also, and he told me, no, we have to start from again. We have to do nouns and all. And I'm like, that's not what GMAT is asking you,
Right.
nouns, verbs. And then
True.
luckily I got in touch with you, and you didn't start me from scratch. You
Yeah.
saw my
You
level.
didn't need that. I could see right away that it's not that you don't know your nouns and pronouns and
Hmm.
verbs and stuff like that, but it's just that GMAT was testing you for a specific thing, and that was something that you were not able to catch on to. You didn't know
Exactly.
how to do it. I think that is
Right. I think, yeah, that's what you should know, what the GMAT tests you, because it's not like they test you on everything in the grammar part. There are certain select topics like in tenses. GMATWhiz has that whole timeline, and it's very easy to then
you love that.
understand
I think
tenses. Yeah, I love
understood
that
that.
part of it. So those
Wonderful.
are the things, like you should know what they test you. Once you solve official questions, obviously you get a hang of, okay, they are testing me for this, that. But if someone already has gone through those and can summarize them and just teach you those, it just saves a lot of time.
So from what you're saying, what I get the feeling that I'm getting is you found the GMAT with questions more aligned to the actual questions than you
Yeah.
found the other platform questions, right?
Yeah, exactly. I found the whole content, when you're learning, or practicing the material, I found the content to be very aligned to the official questions in the verbal part. Quants I didn't take, but quants I think even e.g. Maths Scholarium was very aligned to this thing. But definitely
The
when you're
verbal
coming,
wasn't.
verbal wasn't. Yeah.
The verbal wasn't clear. And I remember you saying once, I think it was after the first session when we did that SC thing together, and you were saying that I wish I had discovered GMAT Viz earlier, I
Yeah.
remember you saying that. And I was like, okay. So just tackling that point only, I mean, I want you to just categorize for SC, you've already told us. So what
Hmm.
about what was different between CR with other courses and with us when you did it with us, or RC when you did some in other courses and you did with us, or other resources whatever that you used? How was it different? So just categorically one by one, if you could tell us. SC you've already done, CR and then RC.
Yeah, I think CR actually, right from my first attempt. So initially, when I first came across this whole CR concept, like I did my CR initially with EGMAT, the first two modules, and then I realized, and then there was a lot of focus on pre-thinking and assumptions, and I was not getting those right. But
I
luckily,
think
I
they
think
use that falsification method, which kind of
yes,
makes you go
exactly.
round and round.
Right. And even when I was practicing with them, my scores were very low. So I was very demotivated with that. And luckily, I came across this advice that CR is very logical. So just try to think in your own way of is this argument making sense or not. And then the thing with GMATWhiz was, it's again very logical, but and you've just broken down into these common questions and strengthen, weaken, and given examples of how a sentence can be strengthened, weakened, and again very aligned to the official questions. Some questions are very tough, but it just helps you to practice.
It helps you. Okay, great,
Yeah,
great.
and it's all with these latest arguments. So yeah, it was just that. But RC was something I had learned from you. Like I didn't even learn it from like the platform. I had just seen one video of yours on YouTube. Where you just after every one or two sentences you summarize the sentence at what you
The involved
understood.
and evolved reading. Yes,
Exactly, yeah.
that's what
So
you're referring
the
to.
more evolved you are, it's very easy. So a lot of people ask me that how did you manage RC? And I think RC,
Huh.
after knowing that method, I hardly paid attention to it. I hardly gave time. It was just going to the exam and just doing those questions. But the more time you spend on reading the passage and evolved, and you summarize your understanding after every sentence or two sentences. Okay, this is happening in this sentence, and this is what I can anticipate, and you're just involved in that passage and learning about it like with an open mind. I think it's very easy then to solve the questions. Like the less time you won't keep referring to the passage, which a lot of people, they just skim the passage, and then with each question they're again going back to the first, para and
Wonderful.
saying, oh, where
Good,
is it?
good. Just go on. Tell everybody out there that, people have this thing that let me quickly read the passage so that I can save time for the questions.
No,
And
don't
what
do that.
happens then? Tell them.
Exactly. So when I also started with my RC thing, I didn't know what to do. Like, how do I approach this, and how should I go about it? And I went to GMAT Club, and GMAT Club has these, a lot of strategies. Like different people go and write their strategies.
Yes.
So
Lots of Frika advice all
yes,
around.
exactly. So then I went there and then I read, sometimes the strategies are helpful, but
Yes,
sometimes
they
you
are.
can just get lost. So a lot of people have written in RC, read the first line, read the last line of the passage, then, skim through it, read it very like briefly, just note some very vague words and keep. And then someone was like, don't even read the middle passages,
Okay.
and all of these strategies are there, and I used to try also, and I still used to make a lot of mistakes. Then finally, I think you held some webinar on YouTube
Yeah.
on evolved reading, and I got a hang of that, and I just started trying with that, and with practice, that worked for me very well. So it was paying attention to the passage, spending some time on it, not worrying about I'm consuming so much time, how will I do it? But then when you're actually answering the questions, it's so quick, you won't even refer to the passage most of the time. So
Exactly.
I think that's the best.
Exactly. It's very difficult to, a lot of convince students that look, if you spend more time on the prompt. So,
Hmm.
in case of SC, it could be the original sentence. In case of CR, it would be the stimulus. In case of an RC passage, it would be the passage itself. Spending time more on these prompts is more important, right? That is what
Exactly.
you're.
Exactly. Even in CR, I think even GMATWhiz has that thing where you spend a lot of time understanding the entire argument, and then you've understood it very properly. So when you're reading the options to eliminate at least the first three is very easy. Even like a lot of times you won't even be stuck between two. You'll just get that one answer and you will move ahead.
And that happens because you understood the stimulus very well.
Exactly, yeah. And then you're not spending time rereading those stimuluses. Otherwise, a lot of like, at least in my first attempt, so many times I was rereading them again. So that just took a lot of time, and I
True,
could not
true.
finish my essay session, like the verbal section at all,
Verbal
and I got
section.
lost.
Absolutely. Yes, 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 absolutely. So in CR, you were also just a while back, you were mentioning about, the frameworks that we talk about, right? So you
Right.
found them helpful, the framework for pre-thinking or the guided pre-thinking.
Yeah, they were helpful. Well, it actually how actually I was very strong in CR, to be very honest, when I started using the GMATWhiz platform. So what I did was I used to solve CR questions, like a bunch of them from the official guide, and then I used to see where I was making the mistake. Or was it in strengthen, weaken, or was it in assumptions or a bold face or something? And then I would dedicatedly practice from those modules and use it that way to just improve upon the
Strengthen
things
on
that
that. So,
exactly.
in what way do you think the solutions help you? Because I get the feeling that, solving those questions on the platform, on the GMATWiz platform, somehow gave a boost to your already good skills. So, you were already at a certain level, but reaching a verbal 44 itself it's a
Yeah.
feat. It's a feat.
Yes, it's very tough. It's very unpredictable also.
What do you
But
think made that slight difference between being good and being like very good?
yes, I think one is just be confident in your answers. Sometimes, you will encounter tough questions, guess or whatever. Like once you marked it, don't waste too much time on them, because time management is very essential. The first exam when I gave, I could not finish the verbal section and I must have lost points. Second time, I could not finish the con section. So I learned my lesson that you finish things on time and be very, logical. And suppose you have learned something now in your SC section, you've learned how to solve these problems on GMATWiz by breaking down. So in the exam, don't go and attempt some new method where you're reading the whole sentence
Hmm.
because of that stress.
Very
Keep a
important.
note. Exactly. So, using those structures, like when you're solving questions on GMATWiz or official questions, you're using that method that I'm going to solve it this way. But when you go in the exam, it's completely different. You're back to your original because of the stress, the time, anxiety, and all of that stuff. So using those methods, keeping that drill, and believing in that those work, and it's like we can do it, is very important.
It's really heartening hearing it from you, and I'm sure all our listeners out there would be relieved to hear that, when you have an approach which has
Right.
been working for you, you stick to that approach, even
Exactly. Yeah,
during
and
the stress
whatever
sessions.
happens, like even if you're falling short and you've fallen behind, like you have this thing, I want to solve this in 9 minutes or whatever, these many questions, and you've fallen behind, stick to your approach, because there will be some easy questions in between. You will get a chance to, cover up for your time. And last 4 5 questions, even if you guess, I don't think so that graph changes so much. So just pay
Exactly.
attention to
So,
this and be
a,
confident.
a while back, okay, so we've got a question here, but I don't know how to answer it. So Sardor is saying that I'm saying it's a he has an IELTS certificate 7 in English. So he's asking, how long can I get 700 points from GMAT exam? I guess what he's trying to say is, in order to reach 700, how long do you need to prepare? I think Girija, you could answer that probably.
That actually depends on a lot of factors. I took almost a year to go to that level. I don't know if it was
And
7 or
when you say it took almost a year, how much time do you think you were kind of on a regular basis devoting to the
so
preparation?
that's what was my issue. So I was working for like around 65 to 70 hours, like
Oh my
on
God.
a
Oh
daily
my
basis.
God.
And with COVID, what I thought was, Chala, I'm not going to travel to office. I'm going to save on like 2 hours in Bombay traffic. So it's okay. But then what really happens with that is my workload increased somehow with COVID, and a lot of people left my organization. So there's a lot of pressure, and somewhere I just could not say no to work also. So I was not very consistent. Like I have friends who've always been consistent every day, daily 2 hours, and then they study on weekends for 4 5 hours.
Mhm.
But I didn't do that
What did
initially.
you
And
do? Like initially, what was your, let's say, dedication or time inputs? Because Raghav is asking a question here. Hi, Raghav. We'll answer that in a moment. And then later on, how did you, like, what kind of time did you start putting in on a regular basis?
yeah, so then I realized that okay, I have to be consistent, because GMAT is about consistency. And if you lose touch of it, give yourself a day or two, but come back on track. So I don't know what works. Like sometimes you can put in 2 to 3 hours of studying regularly, and it also depends. Now, see, I'm not from a quant background. I am a chartered accountant. Interpret numbers really well, but I have not done
Okay.
geometry,
All right.
and all these things are very ancient to me. I have done it back in school, so my
Cool.
quant was very weak. I was very scared of quants. I really required a lot of practice. But some people, like engineers, they don't need so much practice on cons. But I would say be in touch with your studies and at least put in those 2 3 hours daily. And on weekends, if you can, give a mock, analyze your mock scores in detail, and also practice a little questions from the official guides or the platforms that you are using. I think it should be fine. Like then at least with 6 7 months probably you can do that. Like I took extra time because of my work schedule, and in the end actually when I took a leave from my work and I told them that I'm giving this exam, so let me sort of give me some time off at least in the evenings where I can study for a few hours. And they were actually very supportive. Like I didn't think they
Okay.
would do that, but they went ahead and said, okay, after 6:37 you shut down your laptop and study for two
Wonderful.
three hours.
We
So
wish all the employers out there would be as
yeah,
magnanimous, right?
exactly.
So
Actually, even I thought my employer wouldn't do that, but I think I would suggest to people who are working, just ask your employer because it just saves your time, energy,
yes,
and
I guess it's better to be honest. And of course, situations are
yeah.
different for different people. But I guess at the end of the day, if you're able to convince them that it's not only for your good, but perhaps even good for the organization in some, way in the long run. If you have your employees going ahead and doing better, and then maybe even coming back.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
hope Raghav, your question was
Yeah.
answered, and then we have the name is Cypher. So he's saying, let me just he has a problem with concepts of combinators probability. I just fall asleep while saying it. I don't understand it at all. So I don't know what you're asking, Cypher. Can you just so you were just saying, Girija, that you found quant is not your background. How did you deal with whatever he's saying? Combinators, it's gibberish for me
Yes,
also.
exactly. So these are topics even I was not very familiar. Actually, probability is something which we use in our daily life. We don't realize that this is probability, and it's a lot of practice. I would say on the topics you're weak, like he's mentioned coordinate geometry. My coordinate geometry was very bad, and after my second attempt, I took a day's break to enjoy with my friends. But then the next day, I was like, coordinate geometry, I have to learn the basics
Got
from
back
this.
to it. And you
Yes,
went back to the basics. You went back to the
I went
basics.
back to the basics. I went to GMAT Club. They had a math foundation book, so I did those. I learned the basics, and I was still subscribed to TTP, so I went to their chapters and again redid the basics. And I said, okay, I will just quickly guess if nothing comes, but not spend too much time on your weak subjects. Like at least in my first and second attempt, I learned that in my first attempt, it was with SC where I was spending too much time on it and I wouldn't have got the right answer. And my second attempt, I was spending way too much time on geometry and I would have got the wrong answers and I just
Ah.
lost time. So realize that there are some topics you will always be weak in, and then just
You have to stay
if you can,
consistent on the practice. That's what you would say,
you
not give
have
up on it.
you don't have to give up on it, and you should not to put too much pressure on yourself that I
Uh,
need to solve the 700 level questions. Like beyond the point, I said in geometry that I can't do very hard sums. It's okay, I will do the 600 to 700 level questions, right, and we will see what happens. And luckily I was okay with that, so I didn't to put too much stress. Like I knew I
in
am
fact,
strong in
in
the
fact,
number.
Girija, that reminds me, you were telling me that at the end, when you saw that 750, you were very surprised because you had, during the exam, you'd felt it was very tough, right? How did you deal with that pressure? So, Andre, we will answer your question in a moment. Just give us a few moments. Let's just talk about this, that how did you handle that pressure of the exam, that you were finding things difficult, and what did you do?
So it's very pressurizing because it's your dream, right, to go into business school. And if you speak to all these admission consultants, they say, "Oh, you're an Indian, and you are not from." IIT, and your IIT colleagues are like getting 760, 750, and then your average for an Indian student is so high. What are you
Oh
going to do?
God, I know
So I
that.
was like, oh God. And then I was like, and then I said that I don't, after a point, I said, I don't want it to take so much stress. I'm happy with 720, 730, because GMAT is not the only thing that a school sees. And I
True, true,
will tell
true.
you that there are a lot of things. So devote time. But, and what happens is in my second attempt, the reason lost time on quant and couldn't finish it because I did not sleep properly. So I'm a person who stays up at night, and I'm not used to getting up early in the morning, no matter how hard I try and whatever I do. And unfortunately, like my attempts used to be early morning. I used to get those 8 a.m. slots at the center, or 11 a.m. or something like those sorts. So luckily, in my third attempt, I got some 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. slots. So I slept really well during my before my third
Very
attempt.
important. Very
Very
important.
important. Like I have read so many times on GMAT Club that sleep is very important and you
Very
should sleep 10 hours. And I never believed in it because as an Indian student, like whenever I used to study for colleges, I used to like write my exams with 3 or 4 hours of sleep and all. And I used to do really well in them. So I never thought how important it is. And this is like a test I have never given before. These are like very they're not
it's,
subjective, very objective type of tests.
it's
So
very, very important input, that sleep and this. So Andre was asking a question like, hi Andre. Andre is saying that would you say that 8 hours per week for 5 months should be enough? He got a 600 in the practice test. So
I
with
think,
that
yeah,
600, hmm,
it would depend on how you're addressing your weak points. And what happens is sometimes when say, suppose your RC is bad and you are working very hard on your RC, it should not be that you've forgotten your SC concepts or your CR concepts, because it used to happen with me. Like, I knew my SC is a little weak. So I used to give a lot of time to my SC, and then I used to come and do some mocks on CR, and I used to get like low marks on it. And I'm like, oh no, the thing I was strong and I've become weak in. So just ensure that you're consistent at the time you're improving on your weak points, and then just go for it. Like it
great.
just
So Manoj is also saying that he's got a verbal 27 mark. He has been able to improve his quant up to quant 48 in the last 2 months, but verbal 27 mark, although he spent majority of the time improving his verbal. So what would be your advice to students who are facing the same problem like Manoj is facing?
So I would suggest, go to GMATWhiz, try their course.
It was not a prompt for
Because
that,
it's not
but
because
yes, I get
I'm
it.
like with Sunita, because I have been through that. I have tried different platforms, and to me, my GMAT score really mattered to me because it just always helps with scholarships and all in universities. You might not get the best, but even in a decent university, if you get a good scholarship, it always makes sense, for an international student to go there. So it's like, if you want, there are a lot of demos which GMATRIS takes, Sunita ma'am takes, to go there and experience it. Or there are some other resources, like I know there were some times when I used there was some Ron SC with Ron, or this thing. He was also very helpful, if I have to be very honest. So there are these resources which you should try, but it's just first understanding the concept, break it down like you do with quants, because the GMAT is testing you on few points. It's not like SC hai, so they will test you on some archaic
Hmm.
grammar rules. It's very
Right.
like business language. So know those concepts and master RC, because I think it's one of the easiest sections. And once you've got that mastery, you won't need to spend time as you come close to your exam
Right.
for RC. So
Right, right.
do the easy.
That's wonderful. So thank you so much, Girija. That was actually a very, very insightful thing. Small things that you've said, about the preparation, the consistency, the believing in an approach, and the fact that even though you believe that the approach is initially taking time, it
Yes,
improves over time when you stick to it,
of
and then how
course.
to handle the pressure in the exam itself and the
In
sleep.
Initially, it will take a lot of time. Like for me, also in SC, I was not used to breaking down sentences like.
Yeah, I remember the first time you sat with me, you were like, I could kind of literally sense that I have to read like this, I have to break like this. But,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
was like, what am I doing? Like, is this like practical in the exam to break sentences? But
exactly.
this was the way to go about it, and you should also do it. It takes time to master it, but once you master it, you will realize you spend less time as you go about it, and just trust the tutors and go for it.
Absolutely. I think that's so everybody's thanking you. Most welcome, all of you, Andre, Raghav, Manoj. This is Oles and Cypher, um, Sardor and Hamza. So Hamza also wants to push her score from verbal 31 to verbal 40. I think what Girija has been telling all of us is that you need to do a little bit of market research, I think, Girija, to see what
Yeah,
suits you,
true.
what you want, what suits you, and go for a course which gives you a proper structure, the kind that, again, not because I'm from GMATWhiz, but which we do, and which will
Right.
help you learn things in a very step by step manner. I guess that's what was very important. What came across to me from what you said,
Yeah, a structure is very important to answer your question, and that's the way of approaching an exam like GMAT. If you just go with a lot of strategies and you don't have a game plan before the exam, and you not practice that game plan in your mocks, then it's going to be a little tough. So
That's going to be
use
hard.
that
Right, right,
resource.
right, right.
And I think
Absolutely.
in the GMATWhiz, even the official guide answers, they are each solution is like some 8 minutes long.
Yeah,
But
but
when, it's worth it. I think you watch that
okay.
solution
So,
and you
so
actually realize,
so good that you mentioned that. I had kind of forgot it. So those also helped you, like, to gain
oh
insights about
yeah,
how you should approach.
yeah, because I have solved these official questions two to three times because I have given this attempt, and in verbal, I wanted to rely on official sources. So when I used to solve the GMAT I used to say, "Oh God, 8 minutes," and versus just going to GMAT Club and reading the solutions there. But what happens in that 8 minutes is there are so many points mentioned which you don't even think that this was the error, that was the error, and then you see similar points come up in the exam. And so using that, it's 8 minutes long. You can do a speed increase if you're very confident in that
Right.
question, but it's worth your time. Like you will eventually, by the time you solve your 30th question, you will also start picking up the small mistakes and how you're reading, and it helps.
So that means again, another valuable insight what Girija is telling us is it's very important to go through a proper solution of the questions that you solve, and not just the questions that you're getting wrong, right, Girija? Even the questions that you're doing right,
It's very
you look
important.
at the solutions properly.
Yeah, because sometimes we get the question right, but we have spent a lot of time on it, or sometimes we've seen that similar question, so we have got it right. But there are a lot of, when you're solving an SC question, at least, there are a lot of things which are there. There's not just testing you on one modifier or one comparison.
Mhm.
With a comparison, there is a parallelism that is tested. So these all of thing errors, you need someone to point out to you when you're doing your official questions. Like in GMATRIX, people will just give you the answer and say this was the issue, or you have to keep reading and see what other issues were there. But if you have like that whole way of solving, he steps, he pauses the, I don't know who.
Proper everything, the
Exactly.
methodology.
And right. And at the time when you're reading only, you found all the errors, and then it's very easy to eliminate, and you just use the splits and go ahead.
Right. Usually, otherwise, on GMAT Club, the solutions that are discussed are very slapperdas,
Yes,
like
like
slapstick
everyone has
manner.
different approaches to solve those problems, and it can get confusing, and it's very time consuming then, and then you're not even sure if it's the right way because it's just grammar. So,
So
uh,
sticking to one approach definitely is required, whatever that approach be, but you need to stick to that
right,
approach.
exactly.
So just a last question we'll take before we wind down. Manoj is saying his exam is on the 28th. He has been able to improve his score from verbal 17 to 27, which is great, Manoj. It's not an easy task. but then he wants to reach a 728. So he's got about just a month. Any last minute tips that you can suggest, Girija?
I would say sleep well, be relaxed. Before my third attempt, I watched a lot of movies and enjoyed. I had a very relaxing mind. Don't stress much because that also plays out in the exam. Also, just find out what your weak areas are, like whichever place you're struggling with, and practice those questions and go
Mhm.
for it.
Practice those questions repetitively, I would say, Manoj. So say for example, if SC is your weak area, in SC itself find out what areas you're weak in, pinpoint them, and then uh, you'll need some help, of course, either from the free resources or something, and at least understand what is it that you're doing wrong and improve on it, work on it. So that is the only thing that you can do in the last 1 month. From a 27 you want to reach a 700, which means you need at least above verbal 37, 38 roughly. All
Yeah.
right, so that's another 10-point increment. And it's not that it can't be done. I have worked with students who've actually done that. But yes, you have to first identify what is your weakest area, and within the area itself, what are the weak areas, so to speak.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, he'll have to practice those questions. Like if your comparison is wrong, then practicing the easy, medium, then going to the hard, rather than just taking the hard and going for it.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much, Girija. All the very, very best. Stay
Thank you.
connected,
Yes,
and may you always keep shining like this, smiling like this, and doing your best. So thank you guys out there being with
thank you,
us, and
everyone.
thank you,
Thank you,
Girija. Take
Sunita.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.